Hello everyone and welcome to another very exciting tutorial. I am Bernardo from the Oven and today we're going to be creating this little procedural shader water stream that runs across along a wall. It's animated, as you can see. It's fully procedural. It'll run as long as you want. You don't have to do anything except setting it up. Runs with cycles, runs with EV. So yeah, this was something I've used in the architectural video that I've released lately. In the third shot, the one where there's a plant in the background and the sun coming from the windows above, there's this water stream. It's probably hard to notice, but maybe you'll do now that you know. So check it out if you didn't, the video, among the others. But now let's get started, shall we? So let's turn off these and turn on that. And this is the same plane as before with a little very simple material, but without the stream. It's just a few textures. Oh, and a little disclaimer, I use Node Wrangler. It's an add-on that comes with Blender, and it allows you to do a lot of really cool shortcuts that will save you tons of time with the shaders. So if you don't use it, turn it on in the Edit Performance add-ons. It's really good. You should use it. So now that that's out of the way, oh, and you can see obviously the shortcuts here in the screencast on the screen. But let's get started now, okay? So we have this really simple material, and the first thing we want to do is define the area that we're gonna have our stream coming down. And let's actually also get rid of these. We'll create it back soon. So I was saying we want to define the area where our stream will run down the wall, and to do that we have several options, but today we're going to look at one that is one of my favorites. It's a really versatile method. You can use this for a lot of different things. I probably should do an in-depth tutorial about this now that I think of it. I'll probably do, but in the meantime, let's add an empty, which is the same one I just deleted before. Okay, let's add an empty, and now let's come here and add gradient texture right here, and press Ctrl T so that this little texture coordinate and the mapping node appears. And we're going to use the object coordinates, and we're going to select the empty we just added here in the empty little space, in the object little space. And now you can see that we've got our gradient texture. And the cool thing is that if I grab my empty, I can now move the empty, and the empty is controlling my texture. I can scale the empty and it's still controlling my texture. And finally I can rotate the empty and I am still controlling my texture. How cool is that? But let's not get distracted here or too excited. Otherwise I won't know what to talk about in the next tutorial about this. And let's instead focus on our water stream. Okay, after our gradient texture, let's add a converter color ramp right here. We can leave the black where it is. We pull these to, let's say, I don't know, 150 here in the position. And then we add another one and then we pull it all the way here and we make it black. And we add another one and we make it white. And we pull it here if we want to be really precise, 850, so it's completely symmetrical. And there you go. Now we've got this little mask, which is still being controlled by our empty. And last thing we want to do, we can just here in the mapping node translate it by 0.5 so that now it sits in the middle of our empty. And so now we've got our mask, and we can scale it, as you can see. And we can control how soft or sharp it is with our color ramp. And let's proceed. Now, with this mask, okay, we want to use it as a mixing factor for our texture here. So let's add 3 mixing nodes by pressing Control numpad 0 with the node selected. Okay. We want to put this mask in the mixing factor. Okay. Right. So like so. Okay. So now if we come back here to our shader, we can see that something happened. Okay, we've got our mask. You can see I can move it around. And now we want to basically input something in the second socket of the mixing nodes that is going to resemble water. And we're going to create that in just a second. But first of all, water, I'd say, should be much more reflective. So for the mixing node that goes in the roughness, I want to have in the second sockets basically almost black. Okay, we're gonna fine tune it later, but almost black so that our surface is completely reflective. And in our mixing node, rather than having you can see now I'm mixing like full color. Okay, if I put it black, it's gonna be black. If I put it white, it's gonna be white. That is really cool, but it's probably too strong. I mean, through the water, I still probably want to see, the texture of my wall because the water is just a thin layer. So to do that, for example, what we can do is add a converter math node. Just a math node, which is in the converter section of the add menu. Put it in the middle, set it to multiply, and now this value is going to control how much the mask will have effect on this node. Okay, if I put it to 1, it's going to be full power because a little bit of theory here. Okay, so this factor here, if I disconnect this, is, as you can see, is a number, right? If it's 0, it's gonna take the input of the first socket 100%. If it's 1, it's gonna take the input of the second socket 100%, and then in between we've got a mix of the two. So this mask is telling here whereas black is 0, whereas white is 1, and so with this is how I'm mixing these two things. And now with this multiply node, I'm controlling the intensity of the white. And so now the white is actually not white anymore, it's a bit gray, it's like 0.9, 0.8, and so it's less intense. And now the effect that I'm having here, as you can see, is that I'm just getting a little bit of this dark color here, but I'm still retaining most of the information of the texture of my wall, which is exactly what I want. And as you can see, I think it looks much better now already in our shader. Okay, you can see still the wall behind, and it's just a little bit darker, exactly how a wet material would be. So I think we are on the right path. Now we just need some nice textures that will tell us that this is actually water streaming down the wall rather than this, I don't know, ice, whatever this is. So let's create these textures, shall we? Let's add a noise texture, and let's add Voronoi texture. Okay, and let's set the Voronoi texture to smooth F1 because otherwise the Voronoi is a little bit too sharp and it's going to look a little bit jaggy. And let's mix them like so, and let's plug them right here in the mix node in the second input of the displacement. And you can start to see a little bit of there, a little bit of displacement. So this start looks nice. Okay, let's maybe tweak this a little bit. I want to add some detail here so that it will look a little bit crispier. Okay, but you know what, we'll tweak this later. Let's have a look at how this texture looks now. Okay, this is how it looks. Probably want to have a little bit more of and the noise texture, but again, we'll fine tweak it later. Now, let's add some textures. In this case, I probably want to use the UVs because it's plain. You can use generated. It's procedural textures. It won't matter too much. But now what I want to do is to push down this texture as if it was falling down, like if it was water due to gravity. And to do that, you can see that I can use the location right here, okay? The Y location. Now, I could just add a keyframe here and then add another keyframe at some other point in the timeline, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to use a driver. So click on here and then type hashtag frame and press enter. And what this doing is taking the number of the frame on our timeline and inputting it here. So now I can scrub through the timeline and you can see that the value and the location is going to change accordingly, which is exactly what I want. And if now I play the animation, it's kind of what I want. It's just too fast, way too fast. To fix that, let's click in here again. And after what I've typed before, let's just add a little mathematical operation. So let's push divided, and then we're going to divide maybe, I don't know, by 500. So that now the value is much smaller, and you can see now it's nice and slow, maybe even a little bit too slow. The cool thing here is that I can keep the animation playing and I can change the values. Maybe let's try the half of it, like 250. Okay, I think I like it for now. Let's go with 250. Let's see how it looks here. And you can see that we're starting to have our stream coming down. That's really nice. But let's bring it a step further. And actually, before we do that step further I'm talking about, let's also increase a little bit the intensity of the displacement here, just so we can see it a little bit better. And to do that, I'm going to use another math node, again set to multiply, and I'm going to put it in here between the output of our procedural textures for the water and the mix node. And this value here again is going to just be a multiplier for the intensity. You can see if I put it to 0, we've got again our flat nothingness. If I put it to 1, is the same value as it was before, and now if I put it to 2, is twice the value. So you can see that the effect is a little bit stronger, which is good. We can tweak it later. Now, what I would like to do, if I have a look at this, okay, this is coming down and that's nice, but I would like to have some kind of rippling effect as if this was water. I would like it to resemble a little bit more water, okay? So the way we can do this is by adding another mapping node, okay, behind here. And again, like to create that rippling effect, we have to push down some part of the textures vertically, just some parts, and other parts less, okay? So we can do that again with this Y, but we need to mix it. And to mix it, we're gonna use, we're gonna create another little mask, and we're gonna use another noise texture. And we can plug it in here, that's fine. And we wanna add another mapping node, we can use the same there. And now I want to set the Y scale to 0. Okay, so you can see what's happening. I'm pulling it all the way up, basically to infinite, so that now we've got the same value running vertically on my plane. And now I can use this mask, okay, to tell this shader that I want the effect, for example, of this mapping node, which I'm going to use to push down a little bit the texture. Okay, I'm going to use to push down a little bit the texture. I just want this to happen along those lines. And to do that, I'm going to add a color mix RGB node, and I'm going to plug it in here. And in the second slot, I'm going to plug the original UV maps. And now I'm going to use the noise texture as a mixing factor. And what will be happening? That's exactly it. Okay, that's great. So you can see if set this to 0, nothing happens. Now as I start to pull it down, you can see that we have this rippling effect, which is really nice. It's exactly what we wanted. Let's see how this looks over here. As soon as it loads, there we go. I think it's starting to look really nice. Okay, let's make this a little bit bigger. Now maybe what we can do, I think we're really close. What we can do is maybe add a little bit more of motion. Okay, a little bit more of motion, and to do that, for example, I could translate the texture that I'm using as a mixing factor. I could translate it on the x-axis really little, because otherwise it won't work. So we're gonna again use a driver. So hashtag frame, and this time, I don't know, hashtag frame 800. Let's try. And it's really subtle. Maybe we can push it a little bit more. Let's try 600. Nice. So you can see now that there's a little bit of motion, of horizontal motion on those ripples, and I think it's looking really nice. And one more thing, actually, one more thing. So there is an additional way of adding, of animating the textures. And this way is here in this menu of the procedural texture. You can see you have 1D, 2D, 3D. That's how many axes the texture is mapped into. Originally is 3D. And then you have 4D. And 4D, obviously, the fourth dimension is time. So now you get this little slider here, W, is going to add, as you can see, like some further animation, like some evolution animation of our texture. And this is really nice. And you can animate it again using the driver method. It works perfectly fine, and it's going to add another level of dynamism to the water. But keep in mind that this method, it's quite heavy, especially in Eevee. I mean, in cycles anyway, it's not going to make a big difference. But in Eevee, for me at least, without this method, the animation is basically real time. But if I add the 4D mapping to both the noise and the Voronoi texture, I'm looking at a like 4 seconds, 5 seconds render time. So it slows down a little bit. It might look nicer, but otherwise, I think also with just 3D, it looks perfectly fine. So just keep that in mind. There you have it. I think we're pretty much here. Now we're pretty much there. Now you can tweak this however you want. You know, you might want it a bit softer, so you decrease here you see the details of the noise texture. You can play with the scale, and you can make this smaller. You can move it around, and what else? You can, as I was saying before, you know, you can use the color ramp to decide how much of this in-between wet but not totally wet part you want, or how sharp you want. You can see that's nice, I think. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you've learned something, and I hope you'll let me know what you think in the comment. Let me know if you have questions, but overall, let me know, if you didn't like something, if you would like me to do something a bit differently. Yeah, let me have your feedback, because that's going to be really useful so that I can improve the tutorials for the next time. And I hope I'll see you soon for another tutorial. Have a good day.